Well, I hope everybody's enjoying their lunch. And on this cozy day, I'm so honored to be the one who gets to welcome you all in and welcome in Carew Rice, a legend in the Lowcountry. We're thankful for him for coming and for Buxton Books for selling his spectacular, might I add, award-winning children's books in the back. We're thankful for Burbage's, who provided this great southern spread of pimento cheese and chicken salad, which we thought was the perfect pairing for our southern author coming to speak. And I'm so happy that all of you were able to come and celebrate him with us. Hand-cut silhouettes and storytelling have been in his family for almost a century. Clay is a multi-generational artist, a songwriter, a performer, which I think by the looks of this guitar, we might be able to hear some of his tunes a little later today, and an author. His work has been featured in countless national magazines, such as Southern Living and Garden and Gun. His work has also made a TV debut by appearing on CBS's series Army Wives. Clay is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Moonbeam Children's Book Award, the Independent Publisher Book Awards, better known as IPBY, the Benjamin Franklin Award, and is a Kirkus Prize nominee, one of the most coveted American literary awards to receive. Clay's landscape scenes and children's illustrations are sought after by collectors worldwide, and his work is on permanent display in the South Carolina State Museum. Clay's grandfather, Carew Rice, also has a permanent display at my mother's Lakeside Drive residence in Conway. She actually brought these beautiful glasses down, which we've never been able to drink out of. We were never allowed. But they're on permanent display. But it just shows how deep the family talent runs. Today is extra special for me, as I have sat for Clay for decades. At the age of 2, I sat, or probably was held, for him for the first time, which started a wonderful tradition for my sister and me. Oh, Lord. Squirming. Yeah, I think everyone who I work with would probably, nothing has changed, yeah. No, we sat for Clay, and it became a wonderful tradition. It's amazing how he captured my changes from one year to the next, and these prized pieces of art are the first things that you see when you come into my home. His works have become heirlooms, collectibles, and memories. My collection is a testament for this for sure. And I'm so looking forward to learning about his process, about what encouraged him to continue the family tradition of silhouetting, and why they are so magical and mysterious. A silhouette has the power to distill a profile in its most genuine form. Through silhouette art, Clay can move anyone to a place of imagination. Without further ado, Carew Rice.
Thank you. Let's see here, guys. I'm glad y'all took the day off. I just rolled in from, where was I? I was in Mississippi, all over New Orleans, let's see, Mobile, and Atlanta, and Columbia, and back here. So traveling all around doing my silhouettes, doing what I do. So I'm just going to give you guys an idea of where it all comes from. Let's see. This is an iPad, guys, in case y'all are wondering. It's a source of much confusion in my life. Okay, see how long that stays. Okay, here we go. I like to start out with a little sense of place because for us, it's always been about the Lowcountry, and my grandfather, when he started way back in 1930, and it's so important for an artist to have that sense of place. There's a place down the road by a river of memories where I've always gone since I was a child, where you can leave all your worry down by the water and watch them drift away with the tide. And there's a clock on the wall that broke for centuries. The hands point straight down, 6:30 all day. And wrote across that clock in old faded letters, Frogmore Standard Time. We hope you can stay, Frogmore Standard Time. No phone lines, it's paradise found in the kudzu vine. Dive on in, living is fine. I'm gonna set my soul for Frogmore Standard Time. Now the boll weevil train, long since forgotten, used to go by the same time every day, bound for Savannah, Sea Island Cotton, 36 miles, 10 worlds away, Frogmore Standard Time. No phone line, paradise found, kudzu vine, dive on in, living is fine. I'm gonna set my soul for Frogmore Standard Time. I'm gonna set my soul for Frogmore Standard Time. Y'all, thank you. You'll see me glanced out at my notes a lot because I wanted to give you guys something a little more special, a little more homegrown. And so I wrote a few things, and I also wanted to read you an excerpt from my upcoming coffee table book. That this will give you an idea of where all this comes from. The geographical location for many of my lessons in art and life began in the South Carolina Lowcountry in the mid-1960s, about 50 miles south of Charleston off of Highway 17, close to the Beaufort turnoff, 10 miles down a country road at the old house by the river where my granddaddy lived. I remember my daddy driving us down the sandy dirt road, legs vibrating to the rumble, my brother and I watching ahead for wildlife as the strains of Hank Williams and Flatt and Scruggs emanated from the 8-track player as the red Chevy pickup shuddered and skittered down the road, clouds of dust billowing behind us through the canopy of green and gray. The humid air smelled of pluff mud and timber rattlers as the old V8 lugged over the causeway at Stocks Creek and on the final stretch to Granddaddy's house. The deer always crossed here, and the gators were sometimes waiting for them. Catching a gator is pretty easy. It's what you do with it when you catch it that can be challenging. As we glided through the moss-draped canopy of live oaks into Granddaddy's backyard, I was enveloped with an overwhelming sense of awe about the place. Rare hybrid azalea and camellia bushes 25 feet tall festooned the grounds above the thick-bladed Bermuda grass, mostly uncut, that meandered across the 10-acre yard. In front of the house rolled the brackish waters of the old Cheehaw River, filled with spot-tailed bass, which you guys know as redfish, and some of you know it as spot-tail. Trout, black drum, mullet, and shrimp. The river provided food and inspiration. These grounds, along with the 500 surrounding acres, were Granddaddy's homeland. They were his muse and his inspiration and were the foundation of his art. The place was called Brick House, which to most people is confusing as the house is actually built of bark pine. The original brick house plantation burned to the ground in the 1700s, the owners being the Stock family. My great-grandfather and great-grandmother came to this place in a covered wagon in the early 1900s, bought the land, and built the big house. My great-grandfather, James Henry Rice Jr., was a botanist, naturalist, author, and a visionary. He enlisted fellow botanist Robert Ridgway to help him create, through grafting, flowering plants that can be found nowhere else. They were planted throughout the grounds and eventually grew so large that they almost seemed like flowering trees. Even as a small child, I knew this place was special. It had an aura about it that went beyond its breathtaking natural beauty. I've surmised through the years that it must be attributed to all the fascinating souls that have walked these grounds. On the weekends, the big house was alive with people from throughout the region. Folks from Savannah, Charleston, Beaufort, Walterboro, Columbia, Spartanburg, and Greenville clustered in the kitchen of the ramshackle old house. Artists, authors, lawyers, and politicians all gathered here. Mendel Rivers and Carl Sandburg were frequent guests. You never knew who you might meet at the big house. I remember wondering to myself when we pulled up, who do all of these cars belong to that constantly line the driveway? Why are all these people here all of the time? Did Granddaddy really have that many friends? Years later, the answers to some of these questions revealed themselves through my maturity as an artist and the people I met who had known Granddaddy. I could write 100 novels about the things I've witnessed around this place. All of the strange, quirky, scary, funny, soaking, dripping southern weirdness you could shake a stick at happened right here. I could not help but be affected by it. It's extremely contagious. The kitchen was the first room you entered off of the back porch of the big house. It was a large space and was always packed with people. I recall pushing my way through the throngs of visitors guided by the sound of Granddaddy's singing voice. My brother Tommy and my cousin Missy and I would stand in front of Granddaddy and giggle self-consciously while he sang, strumming his 4-string banjo to his colloquial made-up ditties. He pretended not to notice us as he regaled the crowd with some of his top 10 kitchen hits. Tobo, the Ballad of the Mallard, and our favorite, Peter the Meat Eater Skeeter, were among the most requested. "Play it again, Granddaddy," we would shout as he finished the last verse. He would pick us up one by one and say to each one of us, "You know you're my favorite grandchild." Granddaddy had a lot of favorite grandchildren. After a set of songs, he would slide the old Gibson banjo onto the table and pick up his scissors and black silhouette paper. Although the music had stopped, the constant patter of his jokes never ceased, and the crowd continued to erupt with laughter. Even at my tender age, I was taking notes, and I realized that as famous as Granddaddy was for his artwork, he was also a great entertainer. As he would cut, a duck or a deer would take shape, then a hound dog chasing a raccoon, then a squirrel running up a live oak tree, and a woman hoeing in a field. The scissors mostly pointed at a 10 o'clock angle as he turned and contorted the silhouette paper to create various shapes. Quick chops became sawgrass, longer cuts for salt marsh, graceful curves in the cut paper became marsh birds or ducks. He made his work look easy, and because children are more easily influenced, it was probably much easier for me. I didn't realize that at 5 years old I was in silhouette class, and that what I was watching might be difficult. I was over that mental hurdle before it had a chance to fester. I learned to cut silhouettes by watching Granddaddy, and before I knew it, I was cutting out simple shapes that he showed me. Barnyard animals were a favorite, then came deer, ducks, wildlife, and people. So that's where we are. So, have you guys, have you, anyone ever seen what Granddaddy did? Did anybody have an opportunity to watch how he cut? Yes, ma'am, she did. So do you remember how he would keep his scissors straight, right? And he would turn the paper. Everyone thought that naturally you turn the scissors. Well, you really don't do that. So what can I cut quickly for you guys? Let's see. How about these are, let's see. Let me trim this off right here. So let's do this. How about a pelican? How about a pleasant pelican perched on a pylon? Let's see. So you see there's no drawing, there's no tracing. It's just, I just look and I cut. Because you know why I do it like that? Because it's a lot easier than not looking and cutting, I'll tell you that. So, and so basically this is how he worked. This is what Granddaddy did. Just a quick little version to show you how he does. And so, and there you go. That's it. That's what he would do, right? And so from there, you put the detail in. So if I want to put in a little bit of wood grain, right, on the pylon, give it some life. We cut a little bit of wood grain in. Say we want to put a wing on that pelican. He needs a wing. How's he going to fly? So we put this here. There we go. Make a little bit more detail. Here, these incidentally are my profile scissors. They're not really what I use for cutting animals and shapes and illustrations, but they'll have to do. And so you just finish up a little wing right here. Can you guys see that at all? Can you see that? Yes. Yeah, okay. So, anyway, that's basically how it's done. And so when you see, thank you. So, silhouette artistry in my family started in the year 1930. My granddaddy started in 1930 when he went into a dime store, I think it was Woolworth's, and bought a pair. This was actually in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I think, when he was going to school there. And he went in and bought a pair of scissors for 25 cents, which I think was a lot of money in 1930. And he went back and picked up a sheet of paper and effortlessly cut out a silhouette of a blue jay and a squirrel. And he knew immediately that he could do this. It wasn't something that he really had to practice a lot. It came instantly for him. Sorry, my eye tears up. I'm not sad, my eye just tears up. And so it was just a natural thing. And that winter, a judge and his wife commissioned Granddaddy to cut their profiles together. And so he cut their profiles, and that was his first commission for a profile silhouette. And those same scissors ended up taking Granddaddy all around the world to cut. And but what set Granddaddy apart, as well as our family art, what sets us apart is you'll see profile artists, right? You see them everywhere from, you know, department stores to Disney World, that you'll see them. But you don't ever see the ones that do this as well. That's where the rubber meets the road for us. We are very adept at the illustrations and the fine art side of silhouette artistry, which has, I think, propelled us quite well and kept us going through all these years, and set us apart. They are the reason why I'm able to do the children's book illustrations, which again brings you to a wider audience. And so that's the main thing that that we're known for. So the big house was built by my great-grandfather, James Henry Rice Jr. in 1920, and Granddaddy lived there and worked there for his entire life. When Granddaddy died there, well, you know, he had a stroke and he died, but that was the last place that he lived in 1971. So he lived out there and he worked out there for his entire career. And so his work has a certain authenticity to it that is uncanny, really. And people, a lot of times, I'm not sure that they know exactly what they're looking at. They just know that it's just very special. He had a way of cutting that it seemed like you were looking into a dream, almost, with his landscape scenes. They're just so beautiful. And he was just as skilled at knowing what to put in, what to leave out as what to put in. He would leave huge masses of white, just blank paper, right? With just a tiny little ripple in the water. But you understood it, you got it, you got the whole piece. It was just the way he did it. And I love looking at Granddaddy's work to this day. It leaves me in awe. It really does. But Granddaddy, he was also, you know, he had the artistic side, but I always used to wonder in amazement about how you could see he had these big old rugged hands, and he was a farmer, big old fingers, right? And he would go out and he would hoe the garden, and you know, because they did this to eat. I remember Granddaddy telling stories about during the Depression, and the only way if they didn't hunt and grow their crops, they didn't eat, period. And I remember a story about him lining up the doves on the wire so he could shoot one time and kill 6 doves because they didn't have the shells. And they had to eat. And so he'd line them up all up on the wire and shoot one time and they'd all fall. And so, you know, stories like that. I remember one time my brother and I were going hunting with Granddaddy, and he was a rugged outdoorsman. You know, we were going on our way to the deer stand, and we came up on a copperhead, big old copperhead snake, about that big around. And my brother and I, we were still children then, really. We were about 8 and 9. And we just stopped in our tracks, and Granddaddy didn't even break his stride. He just walked up the snake, and he goes, "Oh, another damn copperhead." And he starts stomping the snake with a boot. And he had the low boots, right? They're only this tall. And that snake would strike him in the pants leg, and he'd be hanging on by his fangs to Granddaddy's pants leg. And Granddaddy'd shake him off, "Get off of me, get off of me." And he'd fall back down and he'd stomp him again. And you could see the venom piling up, bubbling up on his pants leg. It was these dark spots, and we're like, Granddaddy, you know, apparently he just, either he'd been bit so many times it didn't affect him, or he didn't care. And finally, after about 5 minutes, he got the best of the snake. I said, Granddaddy, if we had to kill the snake, why didn't you just shoot him? He said, boy, I ain't going to scare away a deer on account of no damn copperhead. And I said, okay, yes, sir. And but it was the same person, the same silhouettes, the same things that you see. He was a wonderful, experienced, accomplished outdoorsman and woodsman, and he did what he had to do because people did what they had to do back then, you know, living out in the woods like that. And but out there we had a little John boat, and that little boat we named it the Leaky for obvious reasons. And so we take that John boat, and it had a little 6-horse Johnson on it, and that you'd screw it to the back just before you put the boat in. And we put that boat in it, and the rivets were all popped out, so it'd be like little geysers shooting up water everywhere, just one after another. It'd be about 10 or 15 of those little skinny little geysers. And eventually we traded that little 6 horsepower for a 9.9 horsepower, and then we were really moving. Do you guys know about the 9.9? You know why it was the 9.9? Well, because anything under 10 horsepower, you'd have to register and pay taxes on. So, in their wisdom, which is pretty smart, they just called them a 9.9. And so you didn't have to register that motor or pay taxes on it, and that's what we used. But that boat brought me more inspiration as a child for my artwork than I think any other one thing. The first time Daddy let me take it by myself, and I ran it around course. And but I remember I was never not scared. I just was looking around, and I looked over there, and there's an oyster catcher, you know. And I'm looking over here, and there's a yellow-crowned night heron, and the banks, the pluff mud banks, were just alive with fiddler crabs, just moving. That's what I saw. And that's what I remember. When I was a young boy, it was just my dad and me. We lived in a little farmhouse down on Cheehaw Creek. We had us a beat-up John boat with a bucket for a seat and one weathered, broken paddle. Man, that boat leak. We crank up that old 9.9, we take her down the creek, and we come home hours later with all the supper we could eat. I never will forget that day he let me take her by myself. Just me and that old John boat, Cheehaw Creek, and nothing else. Well, I ran her aground on an oyster bed, and there I spent the night. Daddy and Mr. Thompson found me at first light, but in my John boat I was doing fine, chasing my dreams in a 9.9. Back in that place in my mind, no one could reach me. Well, I learned to hunt and I learned to fish down on Cheehaw Creek. We never had no money, but there was always plenty to eat. I stole my first girl from a rich boy who drove an expensive car. Well, he gave her all those fancy things, but in my John boat I gave her the star. In my John boat we were doing fine, chasing our dreams with a 9.9, learning those things about life no one could teach us. Well, I married that girl and we moved to town. Daddy's with the angels now, but just last week we drove back down, just my wife and my sons and me. I saw the old John boat lying there, bleached from the sun and the salty air, and all the memories that I had from here came rolling down Sheehaw Creek. I watched my son put the motor on the boat, halfway wondering if she'd still float, and he pulled the cord just like a song. That old 9.9 came to life. So I watched him pull away from the dock in that little boat that had joined three hearts. I felt my father standing beside me, waving by from the dock. And in his John boat, my boy's doing fine. He's chasing his dreams with a 9.9. Back in that place in his mind, no one could reach him. In his John boat, he's feeling free. He's up on plain, down in the creek, learning those things about life no one can teach him. He's learning those things about life no one can teach him. Was that the best song you've heard about a John boat all day? Good. Okay. Let's see. So, I guess it was about, I started cutting silhouettes professionally in 1981. I'd just gotten back from Nashville where I was a famous singer-songwriter, but I got tired of everybody wanting an autograph and I had to get out. Plus, I got fired from Domino's right at the same time, so it all went downhill. And so I started cutting silhouettes, and I started out in the hammock shops. You guys ever been to hammock shops in Polygon? And so I started there. In 1981 was my first foray in actually selling my work. And it worked out really well. I had a line from almost day one, and it was fantastic. I'm like, well, I should probably start, pursuing this and going around to, so I went around to, a couple of gift shops, one in Columbia and one in, Greenville, I think it was, Charleston, and business was good. And so all of a sudden I was doing them regionally, and then eventually I was doing them nationally, and covered 200 events a year in 35 states. And I did that for years and years. But I feel like I don't like to be too complacent with doing one thing. I always want to inject life into what I do, and if you do just one thing for so long, it kind of can get old, the traveling in particular. So I thought, well, how do I do this? And so, I guess it was 2008, Liz Tucker wrote a beautiful little book called Pigs on the Patio. Any of you guys read it? Yeah. So Liz wrote that book, and the publisher contacted me because they wanted me to do a book cover for them. And I said, yes, I'd love to do that. And so I did that, but during that process, I said, well, would you guys mind if I pitch you some children's book ideas I had? Of course, I didn't have any children's book ideas. But I figured I had a publisher, so I might as well say I did, right? And so I'm a fisherman, and so I was on my way on a fishing trip. We were flying down to Costa Rica, my brother and I. And I said, you know, what about a little shadow? A shadow who's looking for a child to belong to. And so I picked up a pen, borrowed it from a flight attendant, I guess, and got a little piece of paper, and I wrote The Lonely Shadow. I have no you, you have no me, you and me, we have no we. But if I find you and you find me, happy we will always be. And I wrote that, and I sent this little story. By the time we touched down in San Juan, I had written it, and I pitched it to them, and they loved it, and they only changed 7 words in the whole thing. So I'm like, well, that's really great. So, and the reason why is because I'm a songwriter, and songwriters tend to edit as they go. So you don't have to give them a huge manuscript and they cut huge portions of it out. It's already, the meat has already been stripped off of the bone, basically. And so that's why I'm able to write, in a tighter way. Does anybody, you guys, everybody's familiar with Shel Silverstein. Did you guys know he was also a big hit songwriter? A lot of people didn't realize that. Yeah. He wrote 17 #1 hits. He wrote A Boy Named Sue for Johnny Cash. He wrote One on the Way for Loretta Lynn. He wrote the cover of the Rolling Stone for Dr. Hook. This guy he's brilliant, just a brilliant writer and illustrator. But I got a lot of my inspiration of my children's book from Shel, from his work, because I thought, it's the way he does it looks so effortless. And even though it's not effortless, particularly the way I illustrate them, he made it look that way. That gave me a lot of inspiration. So here's The Lonely Shadow. This is my first one. And I used my son Connor for the model for The Lonely Shadow. And just read this to you. So my books are also songs. They're either songs or poems. Most of the time I get a song out of them. Or they start out in some cases as songs. And I pitch it to my publisher. If he likes it, then we get a book out of it. Early one morning, a little shadow stood under a street lamp inside. I'm very lonely, he thought. The shadow knew he belonged to someone, he just didn't know who. He thought, if I could find my mate, I would be very happy. The little shadow went for a walk, and while he walked, he sang a song. I have no you, you have no me. You and me, we have no we. But if I find you and you find me, happy we will always be. The shadow stood by a door. Am I a door? He stood by a chair. Am I a chair? The shadow paused by an old man in polka dot underwear. Kind of looks like me there. He looked high and he looked low, but his mate did not show. So the shadow kept walking, and while he walked, he sang, I have no you, you have no me. You and me, we have no we. But if I find you and you find me, happy we will always be. He dined with a deer. He drank with a drake. You drinking with the drake? He stretched himself skinny and snuck with a snake. But nowhere could he find his mate. He leaned against a tree. He was very sad. If I could find my mate, how happy I would be. Are y'all okay? This is not above your reading level, is it? Because I can slow down. I'm just kidding. It's above my reading level. Suddenly, a wise owl appeared. Don't be sad, little shadow, he said. You're just looking in the wrong places. You must go where the children are. This made the shadow happy. He ran and ran until he heard the sound of children playing on the playground. Evening was near, and many children in the shadows were playing happily, and then he saw a little boy sitting all alone. The little boy seemed sad. The shadow walked up to the boy and asked, "Why are you so sad?" The boy said, "It's late in the day, and that's when all the shadows come out to play, and I don't have one." See all those shadows in there? "I'll play with you," said the shadow. "All right," said the boy. They kicked the ball. They streaked down a slide. They jumped in a wagon and went for a ride. They climbed a big tree. They posed by a lake. The bullfrog said, "Ribbit," as they swam with the drake. They raced by the door. They slipped through the door. They raced by a chair. They pulled polka dots from Grandpa's underwear. That's the kind of stuff you see all the time. And later that night, as the shadows grew long, they took to the bed as the big clock went gong. I have you, you have me. Together we will always be. Little lonely shadow, searching for a friend, dreamed about a little boy, the perfect fit for him. And he thinks he knows just what you say, if he could just find you. And he's got this feeling in his heart, he's been looking for him too. He sang, I have no you, you have no me, you and me, we have no we. But if I find you and you find me, happy we will always be. Happy we will always be. So you see how the songs and the stories become one, basically. And sometimes, as in the case with this one, this was a song, this is a children's song that I had written that became a book. So the song was there first. And I play in a lot of schools and do a lot of school performances where they come in and I cut silhouettes and there's a big book signing and all, and that's a lot of fun. But this song I'd written, and it was my most popular song. The kids just loved it. And so I thought, well, we need to do a book. And so the song came first, and I pitched it to my publisher, and he said, okay, let's do it. So this is Aunt Sinatra. So this one, well, the song will explain it. I don't even need to read this to you. I had an uncle who just couldn't dance, although he tried so hard. But one day he stepped in an ant bed when he was walking through the yard. Well, he kicked off his feet, started to dance, kicked his feet high in the air. We stared wide-eyed, he did a shuffle and a slide, yeah, just like Fred Astaire. He danced right through the neighbor's yard and sashayed down the street. He disappeared over the hilltop, but he never missed a beat. Aunts and uncles, uncles and aunts, dancing across the world with ants in his band, going everywhere he'd never been before on his animated world tour. Where'd he go, y'all? Well, he two-stepped through Texas, flamingos through Mexico, can through Costa Rica, man, he really put on a show. He limboed through the mango trees by the Caribbean Sea. He locomotioned across the ocean, pirouetted in Paris. Well, he belly danced through Baghdad. He cut a rug up in Calcutta. Then he tangoed back through Rio, man. He's really something to see. Oh, aunts and uncles and aunts, dancing across the world with ants in his band, going everywhere he's never been before on his animated world tour. He's so animated, so frustrated, but he's underrated and he's highly anticipated. Now he's the world's greatest dancer. He's in all the magazines. I have to read it in the newspaper just to tell you where he's been. Well, that was this spring when he learned to dance, and now it's way past summer. So if you see my uncle, please tell him that he's 3 months late for supper. Aunts and uncles, uncles and aunts, dance across the world with ants in his band, going everywhere he's never been before on his animated world tour. Aunts and uncles, uncles and aunts, dance across the world with ants in his band, going everywhere he's never been before on his highly underrated, slightly agitated, anticipated world tour. All right, guys. So I would like to take some questions because I know there's always things I forget that y'all probably want to ask me about. Like who does my tailoring and my fine sport coats and things like that. Yes.
You said that you have sons. Do they also?
I have 2 sons, Connor and Charlie, and they are Charlie is 16, getting ready to be 17, and Connor is 20. And Charlie, my youngest, has expressed some interest, but he's all over the map right now, so he's 16. I don't know yet whether he's going to. One thing I don't want to do is I don't want to push him, because that can sometimes backfire, and so we'll see. Yes?
Do you use tools other than scissors for your bigger pieces? And
Really good question. Sometimes I use a knife on highly detailed pieces. Very large ones that require lots of, let me show you. Mama, let's make a move. This one, I had to use a knife. It's still mostly scissors, but with some of the interior detailing, I had to go with a knife. As you can see, all of these cuts, all of this stuff is highly, highly detailed, and it's so delicate that if you breathe on it, you can pop it. So, but yeah, but mostly it's still scissors. Another thing that I've learned to do with the knife is I've learned to create muscle tone just simply by leaving things out and knowing where to cut. You see the muscle tone in the back of the head of this fox. You can really tell his skull shape. And it took a long time for me to learn how to do that. But now I can create muscle tone just by what to leave in and what to take out, rather than cutting in the corner of a muscle, you know, which is what you would do. Some artists do that. You can actually do it by learning what to leave in and what to take out. Yes?
Peter, I was talking about this earlier. If I recall correctly, your granddaddy had silhouettes at the old Caballero steakhouse up on the wall there.
He sure did.
The first time I ever went there, I was amazed. It's probably the first time I'd ever seen silhouettes like that. They were large. Mm-hmm. Did he use scissors to cut those out? And what happened to those when the Caballero closed?
He used, for some of those are cut out of wood with a saw.
Okay.
And he used what he called a saber saw, I guess would be a jigsaw, right? And Marcus Bloom owned the Caballero, and I think that when he left, he took those with him, but I don't know where they are now. He may still have them, or a family member may still have them, so I'm not sure. Yes?
I wanted to tell you something. That you have played a very special role in my life and with many children in my life. I discovered your books when I was in a late life career teaching a decade ago, and utilized them in science, built whole units around shadows and
Nice, yeah.
And I also always have extra copies at home with flashlights, because I use your owl book too,
Yes.
so I always have gifts. So I have appreciated you without knowing really much about you.
Oh,
So
thank
this is
you
wonderful.
for that, yeah.
And I did have one question. When I see your work, it reminds me so much of shadow puppetry.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever?
I have been asked to collaborate with a shadow puppeteer before, and at the time I was so busy I just couldn't do it. But I would love to do that at some point. Would be fun, you know, once my traveling schedule, now that it's winding down a little bit. I'm still working a lot, but not as much as I used to. So yeah, I would love to pursue different things like that. For me, that's what keeps me going, is different projects like that, instead of the same thing over and over again, you know. So, yes.
Hi. So I own all of your books, and my children will be here this afternoon for their second sitting with you. And such a huge fan. You do make everything look so easy. What is hard for you? Out of all the things you do really well, what is hard?
Probably the hardest thing for me is putting the ice cream down. Especially that it's that raspberry truffle that's really hard to put down. You know, that Haagen-Dazs raspberry. I love that stuff. I guess that it looks easy, and some of it probably is easy, yeah, like profiles, portraits. You know, when you do 75 or 100 kids a day for 40 years, yeah, that's easy. It can be tedious for sure, but yeah, it's easy. The larger pieces can be difficult, particularly if you're not sure where you're going. But the challenge of it is what keeps you going. And it's what inspires you. You know, any good artist will tell you that his best piece is his next piece. You know, and that's kind of the way I approach it. I love my favorite artist here. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it, was John Carroll Doyle. And although Charleston has produced a lot of amazing artists, but for me, for his sense of place, John Doyle, I thought was in a class by himself for what he did, the historical perspective that he would put on things, and the way he painted was just so sophisticated, and it had such a maturity level about it that I've never seen anyone who could quite do that. And I always said, if I could do that with my silhouette work, if I could create that kind of a thing, that kind of a feeling, and that's what he's a big influence of mine to be able to do that. Yes.
Where do you call home, and do you still have a place in the Lowcountry?
Yes. We live on the Isle of Palms now. I was born here. I lived on Trad Street when we were little. And my mom and dad were divorced when I was young. We moved to Myrtle Beach for a while, then moved back here. But we always spent much time at Wiggins, is where this place is. It's, if you go down 17 South, almost to the Beaufort turnoff, just before you cross the Cumbie Delta there, that big expanse, before you get to there, to where the Cumbie River is. If you take a left and you go all the way down to that end of that road, that's where our place is. And but we've had the place for 100 years now. We were just, you know, we were there when it was a little town then. It was a little lumber town back then. And my great grandfather built that house from the sawmill they from the pine trees, all heart pine. Of course, it's fallen down now. The old house is about to fall in. It's sad. The house wasn't owned by us, it was owned by other family members, and there were some, you know, things that went on over, you know, possession or whatever of that, and during that time, I think the house was one that it fell into disrepair. And then a couple of hurricanes rolled through, blew the roof off of it, and it was so big that nobody wanted to tackle it. Of course, we didn't own the actual big house. We owned the land around it, my brother and I. But that particular project would have been just a mountain to climb. The old house has 26 rooms, and it's 12,000 square feet, and all built, sawed, and cut right there at the place. It was built around 1918 or 1920, something like that. And it had 8 bedrooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms downstairs, and 1 bathroom.
That would change.
Yeah. Some things have to change. Yes.
Well, thank you for giving me the punchline I've always needed to describe my love of ice cream.
Yes.
But do you also have CDs where we could hear your songs?
I do, and I don't know why I didn't bring any. I've got 3 CDs out.
So we can find them online?
Well, they're not on my website yet.
I can get your name and mail them to you. Oh, okay, good.
But if you'll email me, I'll send you a copy of Songs from the John Boat. We'll get that worked out. Any other questions, guys? Everybody good?
Thank you so much.
All right.